Well, what's new with you? The Hall of Fame baseball writer, I saw him on Zoom yesterday or 2 days ago when we were in the Cardinals Hall of Fame Red Ribbon committee meeting and on Zoom, and that's always fun. And I know it's supposed to be a private affair, but I just like seeing Joe Torre and listening to Whitey talk, and your contributions are valuable because you get that historical perspective. But that things moved along pretty quickly, even though the White Rat, had to lecture us a little bit, and that's as he should.
Well, he was. Derek had some good comparisons there, but Whitey thought we were talking about apples and oranges at the same time, and it was all right. Yeah,
it was all right. So I wanted to ask you just the news of the day, which in a way is non-news because we knew that spring training would be delayed and that the games would probably start later than we would want. And baseball made it official today. No spring training games earlier than March 5th, and March 5th may mean nothing in terms of that because it could go longer than that. But what are you finding any encouragement by the fact that it seems like they're more determined to meet and do that more frequently beginning next week?
Yeah, I'm told they might even have more than one session per day, and let alone talk for days rather than minutes. And so I think by a week from now we'll have a pretty good idea which way this is going. That's the best news I've heard out of this for a long time, is that they're actually going to get there and more owners are going to get involved and more players are going to get involved. And next week, what would be the 20? Where will we be at that point? The 25th, right? Yeah.
25th, a week from today.
Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you could still get some games going. That's a short, maybe not. Maybe by the 10th. Maybe by the 10th, you could get everybody in camp by the 3rd or 4th, I would think. If you had an agreement by the end of next week, then you can start playing by the 10th or so. And then you've got 17, 18 games. That's not 30, but it's not none.
Right. Rick Hummel with us from the Post-Dispatch STL today. He's been covering baseball in our town for decades, and it's got that historical perspective. And I wanted to tap into that because, again, you've covered these labor battles too through the years. We really hadn't had one since the CBA that they reached before the 2017 season. That really wasn't a battle at all. That was pretty easy. But what do you think will have to happen next week in terms of what's the absolute trigger point that could maybe set this up to have a quick conclusion and just get everything back on track?
One of them would be to get the players that are under 3 years of service more money more quickly. I mean, the owners have made a little move in that direction, and the players have made kind of a move into arbitration. They're not going to get 2 years solid arbitration for everybody. There's going to be some kind of cutoff in there. But more money, quicker, minimum payroll, and gold. The owners have to raise that threshold on the luxury tax where more teams can spend more money and not feel they're going to be taxed for. I mean, the players want they want better competition, but yet they want the rich teams to spend the most money too. So it's kind of an unusual dichotomy there. But
right.
But those two things, the luxury tax and the players don't want any revenue sharing because they don't think the teams that are getting the revenue sharing are doing anything with the revenue. They're not signing players with it. So I see those two things: arbitration, faster pay for for young players, 0 to 3, and some kind of threshold that has to go up a little bit on the luxury tax where teams can spend more money without fear of being taxed for it.
Other than, Commissioner, I was talking about this earlier, and you can tell me I'm all wet, and I certainly would never be offended. But when I look at this from the player side, like other than withholding services, of course, what leverage do they have? And it just seems to me it was informative, and Jim Hewer reminded me it was informative. I think that they said, I think it was last night actually, it came up somehow, and the players have made it clear that there will be no expanded playoffs, and unless. I forget what their terms were, but they basically made it clear, we're not just going to roll over on expanded playoffs. And it seems to me the owners are really chomping at the bit for that. So do you see that as a little bit of a leverage thing for the players, or am I just misreading it?
Yeah, I think the leverage goes between – I think the players are okay going to 12, but they want to hold – the owners want 14, and the players don't want to do that. That's the hammer they got in their hands.
And so that's something they could get along with. So it'll be interesting. But I'm with you. It is good news. I tend to be skeptical, but it is. If they're serious about really sitting down and doing this, having two-a-days and everything like that, I mean, you can't help but be encouraged a little. Do you think? Just speaking of just the Cardinals only, do you think having a shorter spring training will impact anything as in terms of individuals, whether it be young players, whether it be pitchers, whether it be Ali Marmol, new coaching staff? It's much of the same coaching staff, but Skip Schumacher. What do you see any adverse effects if it's a shorter spring training?
Well, sure. Guys are going to get hurt. You can say, okay, take your time, just make sure you're in shape. But there's a rush to get in shape if you're going to want to start the season. To start on time, March 31st. You won't get much of a look at Reyes or Hicks as starting pitchers, which is something they wanted to do. You won't get a whole lot of look at some of the younger hitters, like Gorman and Yepez and guys like that, Donovan. What your lineup is going to be pretty much. And there's going to be some new players added to the team at some point during the spring that won't have been there long at all. They're going to be signing, teams will be signing guys all throughout spring training here because there's a zillion free agents out there.
Yeah, that's going to be, that'll actually be some entertainment there when it's kind of this mad rush to everybody to find a team or everybody to flip it around, every team trying to find players. Do you think
the guys trying to find a team? You're probably right. You were right the first time. There'll be guys. There won't be enough chairs.
Do you? I think we all assume the Cardinals are going to be eyeing relief pitching when this all is settled. But do you think they've got any other notions, or you think there's any chance of a surprise, maybe in terms of addressing their offense?
I don't think there'll be a big surprise. I do think they have to have another hitter. They don't have any veteran bench strength at all. I mean, you had Carpenter last year, who wasn't as strong as they wanted him to be, but he was a veteran. They have nobody over there now. Even if you're going to count Yepez and Gorman as bench guys, and one or both could make the club. Well, they're not. Neither one's got a day in the big leagues. Donovan hadn't got a day in the big leagues. Nootbaar is your veteran bench guy. What's he got? 40 games.
That's right.
And Sosa's your top bench guy with one season. So you got to have somebody over there that can come off the bench and also DH, and maybe even play first and third, unless you want to run Arenado and Goldschmidt into the ground there. So yeah, there'll be somebody there, and I think they need two relief pitchers, or at least one guy who can start and relieve, and then one strict relief pitcher. Right,
and if they have a sixth starter right now, they've made it pretty clear how much they like Jake Woodford in that role. I wonder if they might go grab another starter, a guy who'd be back of the rotation, a swing guy that can pitch in relief and start. People have mentioned that, like, somebody who can do that is Colin McHugh. There may be some others, but is that something you would envision they're going to give consideration to?
Oh, yeah, they'll try to do that because you got of your 5 starters, that are sort of in the books right now. Your healthiest one for the last 2 or 3 years is 40 years old. Stephen Matz was strong last year, but he's had injury histories. Flaherty was out twice last year. Hudson missed almost the whole season. Miklasz missed most of the season. So there you go. That's your rotation. Wainwright's the only guy who wasn't hurt last year or in the last few years.
Rick Hummel with us. Do you think – I want to go back to something you said, and you're absolutely right, of course, about a shorter spring. It certainly doesn't really promote the idea that, you'll see Reyes or Hicks groomed as a starter. And what do you think the plans will be for them? I mean, will they send Hicks to the minors to work on being a starter? I mean, how do they view Reyes, who did have a pretty dramatic regression in the second half of the season? Maybe he got hurt, not hurt, tired, I meant to say. Sorry about that. But what do you see for these two guys?
Well, I see Reyes being on their ball club as, especially early in the season when starters aren't going to be going very long. Reyes will be the first guy out of there, the first guy out of the bullpen, like the fourth or fifth inning, and he can give you 2, 3, 4 innings, maybe at least 2 or 3. That's what they hope. Hicks needs to pitch in the minors if he's going to be a starter. There won't be enough time to get him conditioned to be a big league starter. And if that's what they want to do, then he's going to have to see. He hasn't been optioned, really. He came up as a non-roster guy, made the club in his first year, and has never been sent back. So he's got all kinds of option years left. And they'll have to use one of them to get him ready to start. And Reyes will stay here as a long relief guy, which Woodford also will do.
Rick Hummel, I wanted to ask you something. I wanted to sort of go down memory lane. I was saying yesterday on live radio, I had, sitting here in my home office doing the show, and I had MLB Network on, and they were running that or re-airing that documentary on the 1982 Cardinals, and you pop up on there, quite a bit. And so Jim Hewer and I had a pretty brief conversation about the 82 Cardinals, and I wanted to ask you this because it intrigues me. I got to town, you may or may not remember, in 1985, and early in the baseball season, I was writing sidebars for you in the Post-Dispatch before.
Oh, yeah.
The football cycle started up. So I kind of – it was really cool. I'm telling you what, man, it's a great way to come to St. Louis and sit next to you in a press box with the 1985 Cardinals, right? It was fun.
But yeah, thank you.
I was telling Jim, it seems to me, and I'm not qualified to give an expert opinion, but even though the 82 team won the World Series, is it wrong to suggest that maybe the 85 and 87 teams were better? And we're not talking about them in their injured state when they didn't have those guys in the postseason, but just for like 162 for the long haul. How would you rank those teams, 82, 85, 87?
85 would be first by a pretty good margin. The only thing was you didn't have quite the defense because you had Clark at first, who was just kind of okay, rather than Hernandez, who was a Gold Glove. But your other three infielders were, Pendleton and Oberkfell were pretty equal, and Herr and Smith were the same at second and short. You had deeper starting pitching. You had Andahar, Tudor, and Cox won 60 games among them. You're not going to see 3 starting pitchers do that anymore, ever, in our lifetime.
Good point.
You had 21, 21, and 18. That's never going to happen. And 82, you had a couple of 3 guys who won 15s all. So their starting pitching was a lot better. That's why that would be the biggest difference in the starting pitching. A couple of guys were the same. Willie was the same in center field. You kind of had to make do in right field. Hendrick was better than what the Cardinals had in right field in 85. And then Lonnie Smith was a wonderful player in 82. Coleman was good in 85, and Lonnie Smith would have the edge there. But the 85 team would have the edge for starting pitching. 87 might come in second because he had some of those same guys. You had Tudor and Cox, and you had McGrain and Matthews were emerging in 87. So that team might also have been better than 82. But 82 had Suter, and 85 kind of made do until Worrell came up in late August in the bullpen. 87 they had Worrell, but their bullpen was probably better in 82.
I was looking at the 85 team, not to go through the roster or anything, but the 82 team, I was a little surprised to find out that they were like 5th in the National League in runs, and the pitching was good. But what was really great about that 82 team is, of course, they didn't blow saves very often. I mean, with Suter and Doug Bear and Cott, a couple other guys. I mean, they could lock up leads pretty well. But the 85 team, led the league in runs. I mean, they averaged about 4.6 runs per game, and that for that time was outstanding. And then their pitching staff was number 2 to the Dodgers in ERA, but it was close. So, yeah, that was what a well-rounded team that was. I mean, it really was. And you had to be great. They had to be great. They had no choice because we're not talking about any wild cards here. And you had that great Mets team that won 98 games that year. It still finished 3 games behind the Cardinals. So they certainly earned their way into the postseason. That was a great team. I mean, I was just blown away as someone new to St. Louis Cardinals baseball, live and in person. I was just blown away by the players they had and how they went about it. And a guy like Tommy Hurd driving in over 100 runs. I mean, it was just it was not the standard model, man. It was like a whole new world. It was fun. It was really fun to watch that.
Well, as you point out, they had to be, because I can't think of a second-place team that was any better than the New York Mets ever in the years I've covered. That was a great ball club.
Hey, did you have a chance, speaking of them, did you have a chance to catch that ESPN documentary about those Mets? That I think it was a 3-parter. That was outstanding.
I have not. I had made sure I wanted to see that, and then I kind of lost track of it. But I do want to see that, because they were a little different breed of cat. They had fun. They had fun. On and off the field, and some of their fun off the field kind of strayed into the law enforcement side of fun.
That's right. You talk about a team with a colorful personality. My goodness, including the manager. But that thing was great. I mean, it was just absolutely great, because what a crazy, crazy team that was. Commissioner, I wanted to go back to the 82 Cardinals, which you were talking about on the documentary. Looking back, what made that team so special? What made them capable of pulling off what they did?
Well, they had a real long winning streak early on, like 13 games or something, right at the start of the season to get off to a good jump there. They didn't, except for left field, they had no defensive weakness on that team. Lonnie was not a very good left fielder, but Hendrick was great in right. Willie was good in center. David Green came up and was good in center also. The infield was unbelievable. Porter was okay behind the plate. And they had Suter. They hadn't had him. They had him the year before, but they he was even better probably in 82. And they had, when they came down to managing, they had the best guy. He knew whatever the other team was going to do before they knew what they were going to do. And he would win games for them. They probably, maybe the Phillies had a better team than them that year. I don't know. They had great talent. But the Phillies didn't have Whitey. And he would just keep running guys up there. They had a pretty good bench. They had Orge, they had Steve Braun, they had some, that's when you had professional pinch hitters, guys who, that was their job. They'd play once in a while, but they were there to hit. They weren't there just to take up space or, go in for defense or something. They were there to hit, and they had them. Gene Tennis, too.
It's funny you bring him up, because Jim and I were talking about that yesterday. I hadn't realized that Gene Tennis had such an excellent season in 82. I mean, he only had about 150 at bats or so, but wow, the production that he delivered on limited time. I mean, he slugged 500 and he had an on base percentage like 436. That's highly unusual stuff for that time, and also that team in that ballpark to be. He was a heck of a player in 82. I mean, I almost wonder, it's tough to second guess anything, especially because they won the World Series. But man, maybe Gene Tennis should have gotten more at bats.
Well, people forget he was a heck of a player in '72 for the A's.
Yeah,
around those things. He did fashion himself as a team leader, a veteran team leader, and it was one day he decided that the players needed to call a clubhouse meeting. And the White Rat heard about it and says, no. I call all the meetings around here.
Whitey hated that, player meetings.
Yeah.
Oh, player-only meetings, yeah. Oh, that's funny. Well, Commish, I appreciate a chance to talk to you, and so thanks for doing it again. And
you bet.
We'll have more to talk about as soon as they they can settle their differences and actually turn this thing towards Florida and Arizona and give the fans a chance to go take their usual baseball vacations. Because that's the other thing I don't like about it, man. People really, not just in St. Louis, people just love spring training trips. It's a big deal to people. So I hope there'll be enough runway there for people to be able to at least get down there for a while. So,
and the people who work down there, that's a lot of their income is working the concessions and the gates and so forth at these complexes. And,
that's right. I'm glad you brought that up.
1 week of work already, maybe more.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, 100%. Well, have a great weekend, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. That's our friend Rick Hummel here on the Bernie Show. He's like a living museum, man. He's got all this stuff memorized. He can start talking about players and from those 80s teams, and he can start talking about stretches of the schedule. I mean, he just it's all still very vivid in his mind. But hey, I think an 85 team is pretty darn special, to say the least. You had to beat the Mets.